guys. I want to talk to you about something today along the path or alongside the path. I see this more and more now, and on one hand it's extremely encouraging because I see more and more warriors out there coming out and proclaiming the name of Christ, and that is more encouraging to me than anything. I think each one of us needs to keep in mind that a warrior is who you are. It's not what you do. So those of you out there who you're a car mechanic, but Christ is your passion. You're a warrior for Christ. You do construction work, but Christ is your passion. He is your focus. You're a warrior for Christ. A warrior is got more to do with the ideology that motivates you than it does with your actual employment or the uniform that you put on. I've worked with a lot of guys who put on various different uniforms who were not warriors at heart. They had other motivations other than the protection of others. I've worked with several people who had no uniform, whose motivation was for the sake of others, that others may live, that motivation, that's that core fundamental drive that drove them, and as a result, they are warriors at heart. So I think it's important as we go out there, and especially in this day and age where we see more and more warriors out there proclaiming the name of Christ, that's a great thing, and that should be encouraging. But by the same token, the question that I want to ask is, not just for you, but for them as well, is, are you on the path, or are you just along the path? Are you alongside that path? And this comes from a particular story in Pilgrim's Progress, where Christian is walking on the path, and he sees a meadow off to the side, and he starts to question, well, I can get off into this meadow a little bit, and it'll be all fine because I can see the path right there beside me, and I'm just going to walk alongside. And then before long, he actually starts gradually veering off, and then he gets off the path. And this is, unfortunately, sometimes the thing that we fall into as we begin to kind of idolize and worship some of these speakers, some of these warriors. One in particular, not necessarily the quintessential warrior that you think about, but Tomi Lahren, the female spokesperson for the Blaze, just recently let go. She was an advocate for that kind of right-wing mentality, which a lot of Christians have a tendency to adopt that right-wing mentality just based on biblical values. So the commonality between her right-wing views and our right-wing views, it allowed us to have a common ground. However, when she went on The View and began to advocate for pro-choice abortion and stuff, and saying that the state should have no say in it, what she really did was she revealed that her chief motivating factor was the Constitution and not biblical values. Now, as a U.S. citizen, as a patriot, I understand where she's coming from. But just because the Constitution allows such a position does not necessarily mean that Christ does. And Christ has got a much higher standard, namely that of life beginning at conception, in the womb. So this goes back to a study that we were doing on Patreon regarding your chief motivating factor and how to determine. I had given the kind of a counterintelligence anachronism of how that's broken down using the acronym MICE, money, ideology, coercion, ego. And what she really revealed was that her chief motivating factor, when it comes down, when you apply pressure to something, her chief motivating factor was really not Christ, although she did proclaim the name of Christ on her show. what really motivates her, her chief motivating factor, was namely that of her patriotism and the Constitution. And as a patriot, I understand her position, but as a Christian, I am a Christian first and a patriot second. Okay, it's God country, not country God. And it began to kind of sink in that a lot of times we find ourselves walking alongside the path and not actually on the path. And for a period of time, it seems like we're all moving together. We're all moving in the same direction. So therefore, we're all on the same team. But gradually what starts to happen is as that path, as that alternate path starts to very gradually veer off, you gradually start to move away from the cross. And you move away from what should be our chief motivating factor as Christians. Okay, we don't have that option of selectively going through and picking through the Bible and saying this is applicable and this is not. I don't have the ability to bring up Romans 13 talking about the fact that God has instituted government and then completely denying the fact that in the book of Acts, Peter and Paul actually refused government rule and government authority because it conflicted with what Christ had mandated for them to do. So what it boils down to is exactly what Jesus said, is you'll know them by their fruits. And not just in the sense of their actions, their character, what it is they're proclaiming, but long term, because fruit takes time to develop. Long term, I'm looking at the overall direction of their life. You know, I'm looking at the overall direction of their message. Are they moving closer towards Christ, or are they starting to get mission creep and getting off focus and getting on other things? So I wanted to put this out as kind of a word of encouragement and also a word of warning, especially as we're going through Deuteronomy, which the word Deuteronomy means the second law, the second book of the law. As we're going through that, we have to ask ourselves, are we just finding common ground with Christianity and therefore we're walking along with the crowd? Or are we actually standing for Christ? Which means that when those people that we see, those warriors who are proclaiming Christ, if and when they take a detour, they get off mission, if and when they begin to veer away from the Bible, are you going to find yourself following them, or are you going to find yourself following Christ? And it's really, really important that no matter what we do, when we shoot that azimuth and we're actually determining the direction of our life, that we are using Christ as our waypoint. That is our direction, that we're not using, I really don't want to bring out specific names or whatever, but we're not using these celebrity warriors that have really kind of come out, some of which have revealed themselves as using the Bible to elevate them, as opposed to using them to elevate the Bible. So that was something that I wanted to kind of share with you guys today. And I want, like I said, a little bit of word of warning and a word of encouragement. Stay on that path. Keep focused on Christ. Just like Pilgrim did in Pilgrim's Progress, or Christian did in Pilgrim's Progress, he kept himself oriented towards the celestial city. And every time he found himself off path, evangelists would come in and say, get yourself refocused. Get refocused on that celestial city. Remember that we are not citizens of this world. We are citizens of heaven, and I am temporarily residing here. I am riding out my enlistment here, waiting for that day when I get out and I rejoin Christ. So something that that I wanted to share with you guys this morning. God bless.